glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at playerstoo.com, that's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it all helps us out, but Apple especially helps us. And while you're over there giving us 5 stars, if you could leave us a little review as well, that helps us out even more. Again, it does a huge amount for the exposure of the show, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It really helps out. We cannot overemphasize how much it helps us out, and you're an absolute legend if you've done that for us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, still in his cupboard, Mr. Lewis Gamley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going okay, Mark. Yep, still here in my cupboard. But the big update this week, I suppose, is that this is my last official week of being on furlough.
Yes,
reality comes crashing into my perfect little cupboard world. So yeah, I'll be working as normal again from next Monday.
Now you know what it feels like, Lewis.
I know, well, yeah. I'm kind of excited in a way to get back to work, but I'm sure that'll not feel like that on Monday morning. But yeah, so lockdown continues, so I'll still be in this cupboard for a while, but yeah, back to work, back to reality, and less time for gaming, unfortunately, as things go forward, but been cramming it in, so to speak, over the last few weeks.
Very good, very good.
Anyway, what have you been playing this week, Mark?
Well, Lewis, it's been more Final Fantasy VII Remake, hasn't it? I managed to get an absolutely colossal session in during the week, which has made me feel so much better about the game and how long it's taken me to complete this. I'm now finally in the kind of final stretch. There have been a few more kind of deviations from the kind of main story here and there. By and large, what is happening is still what happened in the original game. There are just kind of more splinters here, there, and everywhere, which I'm enjoying, which I'm really enjoying, and I'm really still enjoying the game very, very much. But I shall not harp on about it yet again. So, Lewis, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I've actually just been playing more of XCOM Chimera Squad, which I mentioned having started last week. To be totally honest, I wasn't certain even last week if I was going to keep playing it at length, like if it was just a little stopgap game for me between bigger things. But honestly, Mark, I've completely fallen for this game in the last week. I've had so much fun. Like you said there, I had a big long session with it this week where I managed to make significant progress through the story. Essentially, the game is split into 3 almost identical thirds where you're taking on a different faction. So I'm now into the second section of that. And really interestingly, what it does at that point is make the kind of overworld stuff, like the city anarchy mechanic which is in the game, which is affected by how you do mission stuff. I won't go into it too much, but basically there's a meter that's ticking up the whole time. And in section 2, all of that gets a bit tougher and all of your battles get a bit tougher. So even though you've been progressing really well, I was quite worried that it was going to essentially be a reset when you reach that point, when you go back to taking on a faction from the beginning again. But they've done clever things to make sure that challenge remains there and that you can continue to grow and develop and tweak your team. So for instance, the bit I'm doing now, I'm fighting way more androids, which has meant one of my psionic guys who uses like telekinesis is much less useful, and I was very reliant on him in the first section of the game. So it's making me rethink different strategies and who I need to deploy and when. There's definitely flaws in this game. Like the UI is a fucking mess, to be totally honest. There's a lot of issues there.
Man, I think in games like this and games like XCOM, it's hard not to be stuck in menus for at least some portion of the game.
Well, that's it. And compared to like XCOM 2, this is much smoother. You're not in menus for as long because there's basically just less systems in play. And once you find your rhythm with it, which is definitely what happened when I had the longer session, you get through all that quicker, but it's got issues in terms of just like buttons being missing and ways to navigate between certain things not being very clear. I think the game doesn't do enough to explain certain things. So for instance, there are now enemies doing things on screen that I have absolutely no idea what it is that they've done or why they've done it, used certain powers or moved in certain ways, where I'm like, you've not introduced this concept to me, so I don't know how afraid of it I should be. There's issues around all that, but honestly, like XCOM generally and Chimera Squad for me just now, it provides so many of those moments where you just go, fucking yes, like that was so satisfying. Like the final fight of the first faction that I was taking on, I had lost 2 of my 4 troop members before the end of the fight, and it added like a surprise extra battle part that suddenly I was like, oh my god, I'm going to have to dig this out of the dirt to get through it to win. And I got there and it was so satisfying, and that's just what made me think this game is pretty special right now. It's not perfect by any stretch, but for just tactical thinking and trying new things, it's ticking all the right boxes for me.
Nice one, man. Really glad you're still enjoying it. I'll need to get around to it at some point, definitely. Do you think you'll give Gears Tactics a try now that it's very much in your wheelhouse and available on Games Pass?
Honestly, I think yes. I mean, I was kind of intrigued to try it anyway, but yeah, how much I'm enjoying this right now, if Gears catches me in a similar way, which by all the reviews feels pretty likely.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good. I mean, many people said that it was better than Chimera Squad.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm totally up for giving it a shot, and yeah, if it catches me just right, might be that I wait until after I've played something like Final Fantasy before I start it, but yeah, definitely at some point I'll be trying it out.
Nice one, man. That's awesome to hear. All right, Lewis, well, I think it is now time for the news. All right, and news item number 1. PlayStation has done a state of play dedicated to Ghost of Tsushima. We actually mentioned this right at the end of our previous podcast that it would be coming out on Thursday. We got to see quite a lot of gameplay, which was great. They also talked us through exploration, combat, customization, and a very, very cool looking photo mode as well. First things first, I would highly recommend anyone go and watch this state of play. It's about 19 minutes long, but the game looks absolutely stunning. I think you will agree.
Definitely does, yeah. Visually, absolutely incredible.
The first thing that the state of play took us through was the exploration, so we'll just kind of follow the same format that they did. Sucker Punch had previously said that they didn't want any map markers or anything like that on your map. They wanted it to be like Breath of the Wild, and that there would be nothing there and it would be up to you to explore the map on your own, effectively. However, the trailer did show that you could follow animals or the wind around, and they will kind of point you in the general direction of points of interest within the map. And the game director, Nate Fox, emphasised in an IGN interview that exploration is a huge part of the game, and he specifically said that they wanted you to get lost in Tsushima. All which to me sounds pretty great. That all sounds good.
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff. That idea of getting lost in a landscape was totally what drew me into Breath of the Wild. So to see it in a game that looks like this and has this kind of setting, honestly, I can't wait. Like, this video did so much for my interest level.
Nice one, man. Because you weren't, I'm not saying you weren't excited for it, but you weren't as excited for it as me, I don't think. So you're feeling really buzzing for it now.
Definitely. It's really kind of leapt up in my estimations. I mean, I was always kind of excited for it, but I hadn't ever given it too much thought, to be totally honest. Everything that we heard about the story a wee while ago, a couple of months ago, I think they first started revealing information about the narrative, that started to pique my interest. And anything where a world is this explorable, or as explorable as they're suggesting it's going to be, that is one of the absolute must-haves for me in a game. So very glad to hear it.
Nice one, man. What do you think about animals showing you where to go within the world? What are your thoughts on that?
Slightly less keen on that. I've got to say, I thought that the animals thing and the wind directions were maybe like very slightly overdone, and I hope it's a bit more subtle in the full flow of the game than it looked like it was in this trailer. Particularly the way that bird kind of dropped into view and led Jin towards a guy sat at the side of the road. I mean, there's so many moments like that in Red Dead Redemption 2, and you don't need an animal to guide you to it, so I don't really know why they think that we do here.
No, and you never needed it in Breath of the Wild either,
no.
Of course, so I'm not sure why they think they need it either. Maybe that will become clearer when we actually get our hands on the game. I'm certainly not against it, but in general, I don't really think that the game needs it.
No.
You know what I mean? I think other games have proved that they don't.
Totally, I would 100% agree with that.
Alright, well, next up was the combat that we got to see a good amount of. The combat seems to take two forms. Basically, you either fight as a samurai and you take on enemies head on in a very honourable way. The combat initially, to me, looked a bit like old school Assassin's Creed combat, where you hold block and then wait to counter someone effectively. However, when you actually look at it, there seems to be a lot more going on there. If you look at the video again, I don't think that the person playing actually blocked anything other than arrows, which means that they were doing perfect parries all the time. And in this IGN interview, which I'll put a link to in the show notes at PlayersToo.com, Nate Fox also said that the guy that was playing that was like amazing. He was superb at the game. We were watching a master at work.
Yeah.
But you can see as well that there was things going on where he was changing his stance to do more damage to different types of enemies and things like that. Another thing that they mentioned in the IGN interview that they didn't show in the state of play was these standoff things where it's like you and another master swordsman, which will ultimately probably turn into what is a boss fight, I suppose. But even that, when he was talking about that in the interview, it sounded absolutely great. And then the flip side to all this was the Ghost, where you sneak around and kill your enemies by any means necessary, which would be the dishonourable way. And that's sort of what the story is. Jin, the main character, kind of going from this very honourable, very straight-laced samurai to the ghost who's doing anything he has to do to survive, basically. When you're fighting as the ghost, you incorporate sneak attacks, distracting your enemies. You can use fear as a weapon. And this, to me, looked very, very like old-school Assassin's Creed assassination missions. I know that we're pulling a lot of similarities to Assassin's Creed right now, but so did the gaming public at large.
Totally did, yeah.
And it's clearly drawn on those influences as well. Despite the combat looking relatively straightforward in the demo, again, in this same IGN interview, Nate Fox seemed to suggest that it would actually be quite difficult, and he made this statement to IGN.
We're trying to make a grounded game in that sense, so a couple of blows from the enemy will kill you. The game is very challenging. We have 3 words to describe the combat: mud, blood and steel. We absolutely honour the lethality of the sword. We watch samurai movies and people go down with 1 or 2 strikes, and that is embedded inside of the combat. Beating the Mongols in battle will be hard, but it's that challenge that makes it feel alive and the victory rewarding. You can't just run into a camp and fight 5 people at the same time. You'll get overwhelmed and die.
Well, what do you think of the combat then? I'm excited to see it, is what I will say about the combat. Because right now I am just wanting it to be more complex than an old school Assassin's Creed game. Do you know what I mean? Since then, combat has come so far, particularly with Dark Souls, which gets mentioned every time anyone's wielding a sword these days. So I kind of hope that it's more in the realm of Dark Souls, maybe a bit more like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, something like that, than those old school Assassin's Creed games, you know?
Definitely. I get the feeling that that is what they are going for. Jedi Fallen Order was what I thought of while watching the trailer for the honourable part, for the playing as a samurai version of the combat, because they did mention parries and stuff there, and you can totally feel that as he's kind of striding towards 1 or 2 people, but he's not completely surrounded, whereas absolutely the more stealthy elements looked like old style Assassin's Creed. They looked like the Batman games, Shadow and Murder, you know, all of these things that have used those mechanics, you know, really well. I hope there's a little more complexity in that side of the game as well.
I agree. Both sides of the games could easily be lost to comparisons to its predecessors, you know what I mean, rather than standing on its own 2 feet, you know.
Totally that. And also I worry that if the honourable, you know, the samurai mode, so to speak, I think these things will be very interchangeable within the game. I don't imagine it's that we have to pick one or the other, but that's yet to be seen. But just on that, like, I really hope the honourable, the samurai combat feels enjoyable to play, because it's going to be so easy, if there is a decision to be made, to always lean towards the stealthy, because you're way more in control of things there.
That's true. Nate Fox again did say in this interview that you can play the whole game samurai if you want to, but that would be quite a big challenge. You know what I mean? And again, the story is that you are a samurai to begin with. You are incredibly skilled swordsman to begin with, and then slowly over the game you more and more become the ghost. So I think that the game will probably be nudging you in that direction, which is fine, but as long as you can maintain the player's agency in that choice, that's probably the most important thing from that standpoint, I would say. Just the last thing that they covered as well was customization. It looks as though the clothes that you choose to wear will give you strategic advantages, basically, depending on your playstyle, whether you want to play more as the samurai or you want to play more as the ghost. They have also confirmed that there would be Japanese voice track for the game with English subtitles, which I think is something that would suit this game absolutely down to a T, and it would almost be madness if they'd ever had it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Finally, they have a samurai cinema mode, which makes the game look like an old samurai movie, so it's like grainy black and white. You might think, why would you make this beautiful, beautiful game and then put a filter over it that made it look grainy and black and white? But it was a really nice effect, actually. I thought it looked really good. It would have been such a bold choice if they decided to go for that, like as the actual look of the game.
As the full game. Yeah, I mean, in some ways I wish that they had, because it would have been such a statement. I can see myself playing large amounts of this in that mode, because honestly I thought that looked gorgeous. They and the gaming public after that made reference to Akira Kurosawa, who made Seven Samurai, that a lot of this is kind of based on. I love his films. Just watched another one last night that I hadn't seen before, and if they can maintain that style, I think it would be amazing. But there was clips within that video that show the landscape in full colour, and I think it'd be very hard to not enjoy the game in that mode as well, so it might be a case of changing that filter every couple of minutes.
I think I'm going to have that filter on for about 10 minutes and go, yeah, this is pretty cool, right, back to the lovely game now.
Yeah, I mean, doing those like one-on-one samurai battles, like boss battles in that mode would be so sweet.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I'll give you that. Alright, news item number 2. Epic have announced the Unreal Engine 5 with an absolutely stunning PlayStation 5 demo. This was announced as part of Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. This, I believe, is the first true next-gen gameplay that we've seen. And by next-gen, I mean properly next-gen, like what next-gen is actually capable of. And what it's capable of, as it turns out, is something remarkable. What they were doing with lighting and sound, and the fact that they were using movie quality assets within the game, and the sheer number of triangles that they can actually generate on screen at any one time just makes it look absolutely stunning, like in terms of the environments. And the statistic that they were throwing out there was that there was a statue in the game with 33 million triangles within the statue. Then they opened up to this room full of 500 of those statues, and that room had 16 billion triangles.
That is a shit ton of triangles.
Now, I don't know a lot about game design, but I know that the more triangles you have, the better it generally looks, and that looked amazing. What do you think about it? What do you think about what they're doing there? Like the stuff with lighting and whatever was just absolutely amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway for me, was how amazing that lighting looked. And as you mentioned, I'd kind of forgotten actually about the bits of the sound that they were showing off, but the way that the sound reacts to the environment in much the same way that the light does.
Yeah, so it's about like reverberation, isn't it? Either
exactly,
between the light sources or sound bouncing off something, you know?
Yeah, and it felt like with the lighting, they were saying like it's completely dynamic, so much so that if you were to blow a hole in the ceiling at any point, the light would filter through as it should do and hit the environment around your character in the way that it would do in reality. It almost just has to be seen to be believed, some of the stuff that this demo could show off, you know?
Yeah, and we'll put links to it in the show notes over at PlayersToo.com because it is something pretty special, or I thought so anyway. And Epic have said that this footage was captured out of the back of a PlayStation 5 from the HDMI port, which is very, very impressive. And what a way to show off the first proper PS5 gameplay. I think we got a wee bit of Godfall somewhere, but I mean, really, this was far, far more impressive than that. And it all seems to have come down to Sony's revolutionary SSD drive that is just super, super, super fast at getting stuff from your PlayStation in front of your eyeballs. And I can tell you what, Tim Sweeney can explain it a hell of a lot better than me. So he made this statement on the PS5, again to IGN.
I think, first of all, Sony has a massive, massive increase in graphics performance compared to previous generations. But, you know, I guess we get that every generation. But Sony's made another breakthrough that in many ways is more fundamental, which is a multi-order magnitude increase in storage bandwidth and reduction in storage latency. The PS5 puts a vast amount of flash memory very, very close to the processor, so much that it really fundamentally changes the trade-offs that games can make and stream in, and that's absolutely critical to this kind of demo. This is not just a whole lot of polygons in memory, it's also a lot of polygons being loaded every frame as you walk through the environment, and this sort of detail you don't see in the world would absolutely not be possible at any scale without these breakthroughs that Sony's made.
So a big emphasis there from Tim Sweeney just on how important and impressive this SSD drive is going to be in the next gen. Although the Unreal Engine 5 and that demo will be able to be played on anything, like it'll be able to be played on an Android phone right up to 5 years from now, the best PC available in the world. However, will it look like that on all those devices? Almost certainly not. But the real question is it even going to look that good on PC, never mind Series X? Because what Tim Sweeney was saying there seems to suggest that the PCs even have to catch up to what PlayStation is doing with this SSD drive, never mind Xbox. This is something that you can't buy right now for your PC. Like, your money isn't good enough to buy this just now because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, to be honest with you, seeing this demo and seeing what that SSD is actually capable of, because a lot of this can just sound like fluff from Mark Cerny when he was giving his talk on it or whatever, but actually having it out in front of you, I just thought that looked absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Totally agree with you there, Mark. It is so hard to, as you say, to translate some of the stuff that we hear about these consoles in advance into anything meaningful, but this video does it perfectly, like, because it looks like a game that you recognise, you know, it looks like the most recent Uncharted games or whatever, so you can completely understand how it's different, where it is improved in its visuals compared to stuff that we currently see on the market. It's mind-blowing how some of those advances, how far forward they are. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how much that compares to how it looks on PC, how it will look on Series X eventually. It does seem like it's about the PlayStation's advances that mean that this kind of scale and this kind of look is possible, but obviously they are saying that it's playable everywhere, and it absolutely will be, and certainly over time it will be. So I guess it's an indication of what games are going to look like in the next kind of 5 to 10 years, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that this won't even be available until early 2021 and won't be commercially available until late 2021, is that right?
Seems to be, yeah. They've said kind of there's a preview early in the year and then the full release will be later in the year. So for most devs, it'll be towards the end of 2021. Yeah,
so Unreal 4 will still be getting used well into at least the beginnings of the next generation. It will be very interesting to see how games start comparing across platforms. Maybe we can start seeing how some third-party games will look on Xbox versus PlayStation pretty soon. But I think that was definitely the new benchmark for next-gen gameplay, because that was remarkable. I also think that it's quite telling that Epic, one of the biggest companies in gaming, and their Unreal Engine, one of the most important, most widely used engines in gaming as well, chose the PS5 to show off their new stuff, rather than some super duper high-end gaming PC or the Xbox Series X. They specifically chose the PS5 because of that SSD to show off their new engine, and I think that's quite telling personally.
Yeah, what do you read into that? Is that just a sort of marketing deal? Is that a historic relationship, or do you think it speaks to the power of the PS5?
I don't want to get ahead of myself, right? But Xbox obviously has more power. It just baseline raw power. The Xbox has more. It has more graphical power as well than the PlayStation. Again, just in terms of raw numbers. And as well, we think, although it's not entirely clear, that even the Xbox ray tracing might be better than the PlayStation 5. However, PlayStation are really hanging their hat on this SSD to make up the difference, and then some. So what I really want to see is how two games compare, and if all the flops of the Xbox are better than the revolutionary SSD, or if the SSD is the future and in actual fact the flops don't matter as much now because of how fast we can get information off the drive. That's kind of the battle in my head anyway that's going on. Again, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert on this. I'm not super technically minded when it comes to this stuff. But what I want to see in front of me, and I'm sure a lot of gamers do, I want to see how X third-party game looks on the Xbox and how it looks on the PS5 and compare. That's just what I want to see now. I was getting a bit kind of wary about how PlayStation were looking in all this, because everything seemed to be Series X. But if you actually think about it, GDC was supposed to have been, a couple of months ago now. And if we'd got that Mark Cerny talk there, we'd seen that demo there with the unveiling of Unreal Engine 5, and that demo was actually playable and people could get their hands on it at GDC, that would have been an absolute game changer for the narrative around the console race just now.
Yeah.
So I think unfortunately PlayStation have been hampered by the current global pandemic with the rollout of this, as has everyone. It's just that Xbox just happened to get the jump on them, and I think that has led to this narrative of Xbox being quite far ahead, which I myself had bought into. But to me, having seen this and seeing what the PlayStation 5 is capable of, even if the Xbox is capable of more, I think I'm content. I think I'm cool knowing that the PlayStation 5 can do that.
Can do this. I think that's a point to make about the Xbox as well, though. There might be slight differences in third-party games, like you say, using this same engine across both consoles, but it's going to be pretty minuscule. I think if you're really dyed in the wool, you will only buy one of the two consoles. There's nothing to fear, basically, by that choice. Everything is going to look and sound
I think
amazing.
in terms of graphics, these two consoles are going to look absolutely stunning. The two of them are going to look gorgeous. Yeah. But I think it's just a matter of eventually seeing the comparison, you know what I mean? And I think that we're kind of quickly getting to that point. Alright, news item number 3. A new Paper Mario has been announced, Lewis. This was somewhat of a surprise, although we did, again, kind of know that it was coming. It's going to be called Paper Mario The Origami King, and it will be available on July the 17th, which interestingly is the same day as Ghost of Tsushima. For those that don't know, Paper Mario is basically a Mario RPG, and it can actually trace its existence all the way back to the original Super Mario RPG. I have to confess, I have never played a Paper Mario game, nor have I been particularly interested in playing a Paper Mario game, but I know that some of the Paper Mario series have a huge fan base, and Some people absolutely love them. I think it's fair to say that the series has had peaks and troughs in terms of the quality of the games. However, this seems to be much more of a return to the roots of what made Paper Mario so good and interesting and fun in the first place. In the trailer itself, we got to see some gameplay, we got to see what it looked like in the world, and we got to see some open world exploration as well. Lewis, you're far more interested in the Mushroom Kingdom than I. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, hard to say exactly. Like, I wasn't blown away by this trailer, I'll admit. The same caveats that you put in place there. Like, I've never played the previous games. I generally don't actually love RPGs all that much. But, like, it caught my attention. I'm interested in it, but I want to see more. I found that the way that they showed a little bit of the battle system was quite baffling to me. I don't really understand what was going on there. But yeah, the idea of just kind of roaming around the Mushroom Kingdom, doing your usual Mario and Luigi business, like, I'm totally on board with that. So I'm 100% looking forward to seeing more. I wouldn't say that it's totally, like, knocked my socks off at the moment. But yeah, like, reversing that, like, you tend to love RPGs, so is there nothing there for you?
Maybe there will be, Lewis. Maybe there will be. I think for me, I just don't know enough about the series. I don't know enough about what I should expect from a Paper Mario game. I'd be very interested to read a lot of the reviews when they come out. It might be for me, it might be, but I think that my time will be spent in Tsushima and not in Paper Mario Land.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that for me. I mean, I watched a little bit of original Paper Mario footage just after this trailer came out to kind of get to grips with it a little bit, and it does seem like that first game, which I think was on the N64, was really well received and did some interesting things for this Mario RPG kind of idea, but then it's taken some real missteps since then and introduced some ideas, I think some slightly cheapening ideas to the franchise, so hopefully for fans it's a bit of a reversal.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention 2 points on this as well. Right at the end of the trailer, there was a weird Metroid tease thing where you saw Paper Mario in a paper helmet that was obviously Samus's helmet from Metroid. Do you make anything of that, just out of interest?
No, not especially, no. I think it's probably just a Nintendo Easter egg, right? But, I mean, this is not the way to give us more news about Metroid 4.
No,
surely.
But it might indicate that we might be getting some news about Metroid 4 in the
possibly.
coming months, hopefully. Please God, come on. And finally, through a combination of Eurogamer and VGC and Gematsu, we basically are understanding that this year is going to be a huge rollout of Mario games from Nintendo. Paper Mario was on the list of things that we were supposed to be getting according to these rumours. The other things that we were supposed to be getting was a Mario 3D World Deluxe version and then remakes of Mario Galaxy, Sunshine and 64. Do you still think that we're getting those this year as well?
More convinced than ever, except the potential impact of the pandemic, I guess. We might not see all of that happen this year or quite as much of it, but I think this confirms this is stage one of a plan that we have essentially had leaked, so I couldn't be more excited, man.
Cool, man. I'm glad for you. Alright, news item number 4. Don't expect Anthem 2.0 anytime soon. This according to Ethan Gack over at Kotaku. Not that I think that there would have been too many people overly waiting for Anthem 2.0. However, back in November, BioWare announced that they would be overhauling Anthem, and then in February, Casey Hudson reiterated that point, and now BioWare Austin studio director Christian Daly has said this in a blog post.
The Anthem incubation team has kicked off, and we are starting to validate our design hypotheses. Incubation is a term we use internally. It essentially means we're going back to the experimenting/prototyping to improve on the areas where we believe we fell short, and to leverage everything that you love currently about Anthem. We are a small team, about 30-ish, earning our way forward as we set out to hit our first major milestone goals. Spoiler, this is going to be a longer process. And yes, the team is small, but the whole point of this is to take our time and go back to the drawing board. And a small team gives us the agility a larger one can't afford.
Yeah, Daly said that this was an incubation team, which he clarified in the blog post meant that they were prototyping for what Anthem 2.0 is. So to me, all this says is that right now they have no idea what Anthem 2.0 is going to be. They don't know when it's going to be ready, or if indeed it will ever be ready, as far as I'm concerned. Because 30 people is simply not enough to turn around a game like Anthem. That needed a significant dedicated team. I don't think that we're going to see anything from Anthem at all this year now. Last week we were speculating about the EA E3 digital presentation that they were going to be doing, and I asked about Anthem and you said that you thought that they would have to mention Anthem. Given this new information now, I'm not sure that we see anything there at all to do with Anthem, and I'm not convinced that we see anything to do with Anthem still on this generation.
Yeah, I think you're probably sort of right with that, to be honest. Yeah, I was fairly confident that they would have to show it because you can't leave this game idling for too long. So it's good that we've got this little update. And I'm sure, by the way, that team will expand once they do have a bit of a firmer clue about what they want to do with it. But yeah, it does sound like it's a real strip back, right? Right back to basics rather than kind of flood a team with people and tweak it and get it back out kind of thing.
Absolutely, yes. It seems to be a total rethink of what the game could even be, which is insane for a game of that quality, for a game that was supposed to be an absolute blockbuster for EA. Yeah. Fair enough, it fell on its face, but to rethink that from the ground up is wild, absolutely wild. Alright, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, a new Mafia Trilogy has been announced, Lewis. The official announcement only came actually a matter of hours ago as we record this, but it had leaked all over the place last week. Anything that you wanted to know about this game, you probably already knew last week. The trilogy consists of, 3 games you won't be shocked to hear. Mafia 1, the Definitive Edition, which is a remake from the ground up, including updated script, new cutscenes and new gameplay. Mafia 2, the Definitive Edition, which is a remaster of the second game, including 4K graphics and all the DLC. And Mafia 3, the Definitive Edition, which I've got remake in kind of air quotes here, because the third game actually only came out in 2016, and I do think that the updates to this game are fairly marginal, but it does include all the DLC. Mafia 2 and 3 are actually out today as we record this, which is Tuesday, so by the time you hear this on Thursday, the games will have already been out for a couple of days and you'll maybe even get to read some reviews on them. But Mafia 1, which has been rebuilt from the ground up by all intents and purposes, won't be out until August the 28th. Finally, if you own Mafia 2 on Steam, or if you own Mafia 3 on Xbox, PC or Steam, you can get an update to the Definitive Edition for free, which is really great. I never played Mafia 2 or 3, but Mafia 1 was absolutely great, and if they are making a ground-up remake of that game, I would definitely play that, man.
Absolutely, yeah, I loved it as well. If it was a PS2 game, right, so it's definitely ready for a kind of full-scale remake. Also should be mentioned that all 3 of these games can be bought together, and I think it was only like 50 quid for 3 games, including one that's pretty recent, so I think it's a strong offer. They're not sequential, you don't have to play them in order, it's not one story, so the fact that they're out now and the first one isn't out till later doesn't really matter, even if it is a little strange. I think it's pretty cool. Like, if there's Mafia fans, this is something for them, definitely. Yeah.
I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of people that were really interested in this, just online in general. It was cool. Good for the fans, definitely. Alright, shout out number 2. Epic have announced that any game created on its Unreal Engine will no longer have to pay royalties on their first $1 million in revenue, which is insane. This coupled with the fact that Unreal is already free to use and the royalties themselves are only 5% even if you do go over $1 million, it is an astonishingly good deal and will be a big deal to a lot of indie devs and things like that out there who use this engine to create their games. And obviously it will still continue to get a huge amount of money in royalties off of their bigger games out there, which are the people that really should be paying for it. And it's great that they're allowing indies and people with not much money an easy way into the industry, do you know what I mean, effectively. And yeah, I just think that's great. And it will also be retroactive until January the 1st, which, I mean, even better, you know. It also seems that the Epic Games Store are now issuing partial refunds on games that have had their prices lowered. They've been sending out emails that states you recently placed orders from the Epic Games Store. The price of these games you purchased were recently lowered, so we are issuing a partial refund for the difference. I mean, just to do that, just off the cuff, nobody asking for it, nobody expecting it, is great. Epic have not said a single thing about this policy, so I don't really know what the window is for the purchase. So I don't know if 6 months ago you bought a game and now they're reducing the price if you still get it, or if it's only within like a couple of weeks or whatever. But even still, it's better than nothing. And along with that, Epic have also announced that the Games Store will soon have mod support, achievements, bandwidth management, keyless integration, and will support more currencies, which is great. And also on the Epic Games Store just now, a lot of Epic news, a lot of this kind of came out around the same time as the Unreal Engine 5, as you would imagine. There's Also, an extremely good sale going on just now on the Epic Games Store, which includes Alan Wake for under £2. Currently, GTA 5 is free here in the UK until 4 p.m. on Thursday, and there will be a new free game every Thursday so long as the sale goes on, which is just great. It's just a lot of good stuff. It's a lot of good stuff. Can't really complain about any of it.
Yeah, a lot of good news from Epic. That deal for the first £1 million royalty free is unbelievable.
Astonishing.
Particularly for indies, like you say, and also for those AA games that will make, they will be paying royalties eventually, but it's a nice little cushion before that.
Oh, 100%, yeah, definitely. Now that we know that Epic are trying to involve more developers in their system, we recently spoke about how Remedy was now associated with Epic Games Store, and the guys from Team Ico, their new studio and whatever, like they're all associated with them. So I think that it's just stuff like this that's just getting them more and more and more goodwill in the industry, and as long as it doesn't blow up in anybody's face, great. I mean, Epic are making money hand over fist, so I don't think they've got anything to worry about,
Well, that's it, and reinvesting that Fortnite money in the industry, that's got to be applauded.
Absolutely. Alright, shout out number 3. Gamescom have announced an all-digital show that will take place on August the 27th to the 30th. This will include Jeff Keighley's opening night live on the 27th. That will also be the finale of Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest, which has so far brought us Tony Hawk, the Unreal Engine 5, and the first proper next-gen footage. So, thumbs up to that as well. The question remains, though, why has it been so easy for everyone else to put these shows on, and E3 has done nothing?
Hard to say, Mark. I still can't shake the idea that E3 just made a decision rather than it being something that they couldn't do. But that decision is starting to look more and more foolish as the weeks and the announcements roll by,
Yeah, unfortunately, as I don't understand why E3 couldn't have done something like this. They had people on board. They have an audience that would have tuned into it. I just don't understand why they've decided nothing was the right answer. Do you know what I mean? When everybody else seems to be bending over backwards to try and get content out there in other ways. And in a lot of ways, I think that this only proves their own irrelevance.
Yeah, to an extent, absolutely. I do wonder whether the publishers maybe saw that irrelevance themselves, and when presented with the idea of folding all their news in together with everyone else's, or just putting stuff out themselves, they realised without the show floor and without the congregation of people that you get on the show floor, that really E3 wasn't offering them anything that they couldn't do themselves. Maybe that factors into the decision, but yeah, it feels now more and more that E3 should have pulled something together, even just to stay relevant within this year,
Absolutely. All of these other companies are coming together and doing great things and supporting one another in the industry, and the ESA, who should be the people doing that, are doing nothing. It boggles the mind. It really does. All right, Lewis. Well, I think it is time for a beer, and then we will be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is expectations around the Switch to the next generation, Lewis.
That is right, Mark. Yeah, so I guess I've just been thinking a lot over the last few weeks about this moment that we will soon be in, where we're transitioning from the PS4 and Xbox One generation into the next generation, and what that looks like. And that's particularly driven by things like the really quite negative reaction in a lot of ways to the Inside Xbox showcase of quote-unquote next-gen gameplay, then to move on to the much more positive reaction to Ghost of Tsushima and even the Last of Us trailers that we've had recently for current gen, and then the crazy overwhelming reaction which we've been talking a bit about today towards the Unreal Engine 5 reveal and how good that looks. So there's these kind of stages of what people might be expecting the next gen to look like and reactions to that. And basically I just want to see what you think. What can gamers kind of expect the start of this new generation to look like? Starting off, Mark, I just want to ask you, from everything that you've seen so far, so the Inside Xbox showcase and the Unreal Engine 5 trailer, not thinking too much about specific games, but what do you think gamers can expect the early days of the new console generation to look like? Maybe that launch window from, say, November to March. Are people going to be impressed?
Yes. I think people will be impressed by what they see. I don't think that it will be as jaw-dropping as that Unreal Engine 5 demo that we saw, because as we were discussing, the Unreal Engine 5 doesn't actually become commercially available until the end of 2021.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of time frames that we're looking for here. In terms of what do I think that they're going to see from the immediate next generation, the early next generation, I don't think that we're going to see games that look massively different from the current gen. And I think that has a lot to do with our incremental improvements to graphics. I think behind the scenes there might be a lot more going on, and we might experience the games in hopefully better ways, and hopefully there is more interesting things that can be done within the game mechanics. But in terms of visuals, which has been quite an important thing for generational leaps, I don't think that we're going to see a huge difference here. For example, I don't think that The Last of Us Part 2 played on a PlayStation Pro is going to look that much different from Halo Infinite, say, or Godfall, whatever.
Yeah.
The early next-gen games, because in reality, the PS3 to the PS4 had a bit more of an obvious graphical increase than this generation. However, the games back then didn't look massively different from the games that you would expect to find on a PS3. So I just think that this is something that we're just going to have to deal with. They're not all going to look like that Unreal 5 demo right away. They're not. That's a totally unrealistic expectation. If we're talking about managing expectations here, do not expect that. Do not expect that on day one. Do not even expect that maybe within the first 2 years, I would say,
well, as
of
long
you
as
having that console. Maybe that's a bit much. I think that when they commercially launch Unreal Engine 5, you'll have probably had teams working on it for a long period of time, having early access to the technology sort of thing. So maybe by the end of 2021, we start getting games made on the Unreal Engine 5. But in terms of optimizing the hardware and optimizing that software, both of these are new things, you know what I mean? So I don't think that we're going to get anything quite that good that quickly. I don't think that in that release window that you were talking about, the first few months between whenever the consoles launch and say March, like the kind of first quarter of the next year, I don't think that we're going to have anything that visually is that different from the current generation.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. And obviously, Unreal Engine 5 is one part of this. There's a lot of other engines, particularly first-party titles will be using different
in-house
things,
engines. There's engines on engines on engines.
Totally there are. But I do think that it's going to be hard to get something that looks anywhere near as good as that so early on. Really interestingly there, you mentioned like that being the case for the visuals, but who knows about the gameplay. That is one of the things that does kind of worry me at the moment, based on what we saw at Inside the Xbox, is that nothing there, and you kind of touched on it quite a bit when we were talking about that, nothing there looked like next-gen gameplay, either in terms of new ideas or kind of new mechanics or really interesting new IP. And I just wonder, like, do you think that this is going to be quite a shallow transition between the two generations? Like, I suppose really what I'm asking you, right, is what will be required to convince people that they have to buy one of the new consoles at launch? Forgetting the diehards like us who are probably going to do it anyway. Your average gamer, like, what's going to convince them to take the plunge so early?
What's going to convince them to take the plunge so early? Honestly, I'm not sure that there is going to be anything that is going to convince them to take the plunge so early. I think particularly now, and especially on the Xbox side of things, you have so many options to get good games now. Good games and cheap, particularly talking about Games Pass. But not just that, the back catalogue for the PS4 and the Xbox One just now are incredible. There are some absolutely amazing games out there for those things. In terms of games that you can play on a console, there is currently no better time to buy the current generation. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think, unlike previous years, there was like a clear thing of, oh, this is going to be so much better. I think that there will be less of a reason this generation, as opposed to previous generations, for people other than the quotes early adopters like us to switch across, because there's been so much done with backwards compatibility and all that stuff as well. I mean, obviously we only know this for the Xbox side, but you would like to think, or I certainly would like to think, that PlayStation at least have some sort of response to that as well. So yeah, I'm not really sure that there will be that this time round. I think that there will be a huge swathe of people that do buy them all anyway, but in terms of those middling gamers that are a lot more casual, they're playing their Call of Duties, their FIFAs, maybe they'll end up upgrading to the next generation when the next when FIFA 2022 comes out rather than when 2021 comes out, you know what I mean? Things like that. And presuming that the next Call of Duty is also cross-generation, including its online mode, which I very much suspect that it will be. I think things like that will also help people stay on their current hardware, do you know what I mean, and not having the need to spend that money. As well, the fact is that it might not be financially viable for people to consider going and spending potentially $500 or whatever on a new generation console right now. You know what I mean? You might have bigger fish to fry in your life at this precise moment. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of things like that will factor in as well. Ultimately, I think the adoption rate of the new generation will probably be the slowest that we've seen in a long time.
Wow, yeah.
Is my prediction.
Yeah. To be honest, like I find that both kind of sort of worrying in a sense and upsetting, but also I totally agree, because I do think that both platforms will have quite a bit of work to do to convince a lot of people, and not just the people who buy FIFA every year and that's kind of it, but a lot of those mid-level gamers, and particularly the ones with, as you mentioned, like financial difficulties this pandemic year of all years, convincing them that it's really required by any stretch and that the games are worth diving into. So I guess I'm bringing a lot of this up because it's so easy particularly after that Unreal Engine 5 demo, to be like, oh my god, the future's here and it looks incredible and I must have it.
Yeah.
But I think that transition is going to be a lot trickier for a lot of people, which is, you know.
I think that's how people like you and me feel.
Yeah, maybe.
about that demo. I think a lot of people are going, oh well, the character looks a bit like she's out of Fortnite, the environments are nice, but so what?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've just seen The Last of Us Part 2 trailer and that looked great as well. So
yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you know anything about games, you can tell that the Unreal 5 demo was significantly more impressive, I would say, in terms of visuals anyway. But I think that you're right. I think that a lot of people are going to find it difficult to justify that purchase immediately. And in a lot of ways, Xbox are actually leaning into that with their current marketing program. They are saying, oh, well, all the new Xbox games are also going to be on the previous platform for, what was it, at least a year?
Yeah, I think so.
It was a couple of years or whatever.
Yeah.
This console will still be viable to you, even though there's a new one out. So Xbox are leaning really heavily into that messaging as well. Not so much PlayStation, but Xbox right now are putting that message out there, and people are listening, I think, and going, well, yeah, maybe I don't need to upgrade right away, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's almost the key thing, that this generation, both from the backwards compatibility aspect, which obviously, you know, Xbox have been good for in the past, and they've been very kind of upfront and clear about how it's going to work for the next generation. PS5, a bit less so, but we do know most of the top 100 or whatever titles will be backwards compatible. There's that aspect, and then there's also it feels like there's going to be a very long cross-generational tail, maybe longer than we've ever seen before, between this generation and the next generation.
Very possibly. I mean, there's a lot of PlayStations out there, do you know what I mean? It's in PlayStation's interest as well to keep selling to people on those platforms as well, you know? And if it is going to be a slower adoption rate, which I'm sure PlayStation are expecting, then I think the PS4 will be supported for a very long time.
Absolutely. And particularly when you have such a strong year of games this year, some of that might be affected by COVID. But the thing that worries me as well about looking forward to the next generation is that this year, and in the last 2 years in particular, have been so strong games-wise, and I really worry that if that launch slate is typically bad, launch slates are often not really the best sort of slate of games.
They are limited by their nature.
Totally.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, exactly. And I did some research earlier today just on what the Game of the Year contenders for 2013 were versus 2014, right? Because that's obviously that generational shift. 2013 has some great games, Grand Theft Auto 5 being kind of one of the big winners. The Last of Us original game came out at that point as well. The next year was like Dragon Age Inquisition, and I think Hearthstone was nominated for Game of the Year and stuff
Notably
like that.
Janky. Hearthstone was great. I will not have a bad word to say against Hearthstone. But
I'm not saying that. I think Bayonetta 2 even was nominated for Game of the Year, and I'm not saying by any stretch that these are bad games, but considering the types of games we've had nominated in the last few years.
Yeah, when you're talking about comparing Bayonetta 2, which was a great game, and I loved Bayonetta 2 as well, I will not have a bad word said against that either, but comparing that to games even like Death Stranding, which wasn't everyone's cup of tea, I mean, to me that's night and day, do you know what I mean? It's not even a competition.
Exactly, yeah. And so because of that, as bluntly as I can put it, should we expect that next year's Game of the Year contenders will be better than this year's Game of the Year contenders? And again, what does that mean for the future of the generations, you know?
That's a very interesting question, Liz. I think that we will more than likely have a similar situation now. I don't know what everyone thinks of Dragon Age Inquisition. I'm sure that year it probably was one of the better games out there, but me and Lewis went to go and play that maybe a couple of years ago, and it was janky as hell. And that game had been out for a long time by the time we got around to playing it. For me, nowhere close to being a Game of the Year contender, or certainly if it came out in the same year as Breath of the Wild or Mario or God of War or Spider-Man or Red Dead or even last year with Death Stranding and Control and stuff like that. That wouldn't even have been in contention for me personally. So I very much understand what you're saying here. I think that we will more than likely have a similar situation again this generational leap. Right now, we're looking down the barrel of Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, The Avengers, Watch Dogs, Cyberpunk. I mean, we are absolutely spoiled right now. Coming right to the end of this generation, everyone knows exactly what they're doing with the hardware, how to make it all sing. And we are going to get some absolutely crackers, and we are going to finish this generation off with a big bang.
Yeah.
But next year, when we're talking about the new generation of games, as you said, they are going to be limited first and foremost. PlayStation and Xbox are going to come out swinging, though. We already know for a fact that we're getting Halo Infinite day one for the Xbox, which is, of course, a great move for them. Probably quite a necessary move for them as well. But at the same time, like, PlayStation have got to come out with something as well. It's long been rumoured that that will be Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or whatever it ends up being called, which would be great. And I'm not sure it has quite the clout to contend with Halo in terms of like historical significance, but it is a damn good game that people should be interested in buying, you know. So I think that it would be those sort of things. But having said that, I don't think that Horizon Zero Dawn 2, if it does exist and it does come out of the launch of the new consoles, and The Last of Us Part 2, which we know has been painstakingly crafted by Naughty Dog for a long period of time, I'm not sure that the difference between those two games is going to be as big as people think that it might be. If you're expecting some obviously mad, crazy jump into the next generation, I simply don't think that it has it. And coming back to your point of managing expectations, I don't think you should expect that either.
Just to clarify there, you mean people should not expect that a Horizon Zero Dawn 2 at the launch of the PS5 would be better, considerably better than The Last of Us Part 2?
Considerably better. I fully believe that it would look better. It would look better, and it has more power behind it, do you know what I mean? So it could very well play better, but what I'm saying is that it might not be significantly better.
Totally. To be honest, like, I can't expect that Horizon Zero Dawn, like, we've obviously just adopted this idea that it's that, but just for talking sake,
just X launch title for the PS5.
Yeah, but if it is Horizon Zero Dawn, like, I can't see, other than visually, that game will be substantially better than, say, Ghost of Tsushima will be, because
I don't necessarily disagree with that either. Like, again, I was just using Last of Us, but any of these end of the generation titles, Cyberpunk, like Watch Dogs, all that stuff that we'd already mentioned, I don't think that it is unreasonable to think that game is maybe only slightly better than those games.
Yeah, and I still think only visually. Like, I can imagine a world
only visually, as well,
where everything that comes out this year, all the major releases this year, so if you're talking about your Final Fantasy VII, Cyberpunk, The Last of Us Part 2, maybe Ghost of Tsushima, I don't know that any launch title on either platform is going to be an actually better game than any of those things, you know? I don't think that they have that yet.
I would agree. I mean, by all accounts, people are excited for Halo Infinite. I have no doubt that will be a very good game as well. They've got to knock it out of the park with that, and Xbox are putting a lot behind it.
Yeah,
so I believe that will be a very good game. They've got to, of course they do. I mean, it's the flagship title as well, for God's sake. You know what I mean? It's got to be a good one. And similarly, PlayStation will be doing exactly the same thing with whatever the big launch first party is going to be. It's almost certainly going to happen. But as you said, are they actually going to be a better game than Ghost of Tsushima, than Cyberpunk, Watch Dogs, Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII? Who knows? Who knows? Do you know what I mean? I mean, we suspect that they have the potential to be, simply because they've got that new hardware behind them, which allows developers to do new and interesting things. But in reality, those games might be worse than the games that you played at the end of the last generation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And often it takes a couple of years of playing around with these new tools and seeing what this hardware can do for developers to really understand what they can bring, like what new ideas, what new mechanics can they bring to life in games that will push us forward, you know?
Absolutely, man. So tamper expectations is basically what you're saying here, Liz.
We're pissing all over your chips today. That's the idea. No, I guess it is just that. I do get concerned that when we get our launch slates revealed and we start to see trailers for that, people might start to go, hang on, this isn't the future. And I guess I just want to have that conversation to reassure us and the listeners that the best stuff is still down the line. Like, this is going to be a funny year of transition, of playing a lot of games that are available on the console that you already owned, but they just look slightly better. But, you know, that the real innovation is still a couple of years away. Yeah,
and something that I would say kind of on the converse of all this side is that, see, if you can't financially justify moving on from your current console, like, don't fucking worry about it. Jesus, you have so much to play. You have so much to play. Like, don't worry about it. See if it's 6 months down the line. See if it's a year down the line, man. That UE5 demo is not going to be realised for a long time. No. So if that's what you're wanting as your next generation console, that is a ways away. Totally. That is a ways away.
And for everyone who does adopt right at the beginning, most of the games that you'll be playing are games that are available on the previous generation, possibly were originally released on that previous generation. Like, I can totally imagine that come January January, February next year, the game that you and I are playing on PS5 is actually something that was released in 2020 on PS4, or even earlier than that, you know?
Well, I'll tell you this, I think that there's a very, very good chance that I play Cyberpunk on the next generation.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
Exactly, and I suspect...
If it comes out at launch as well, like if there's not some porting process and it takes ages.
Yeah.
But if that came out initially on the PS4 and I knew that like a month later it was going to be out on the PS5, I think I'd probably just wait for a game like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Something that's quite special, you know. Anyway, Lewis, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find Players2 on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at players2.com. That's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're over there leaving us 5 stars, if you could leave us a little review as well, that really, really helps us out. Again, it does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. If you've already done that for us, you're an absolute legend. It really does help us out. I cannot overemphasize that enough. I say it every week, twice every week, and I cannot overemphasize that enough. It really, really helps us out, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. I'd like to remind everyone that our play along game for this month is Thomas Was Alone. I'm going to finish off Final Fantasy VII, then it'll be onto that right away. I've decided. I need an indie game. I'm feeling an indie game. I'm feeling a short experience. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be jumping onto that.
Nice one. Yeah, I've still not started playing it, but was writing up the article about it for PlayersToo.com this week and just got really kind of excited to try it out. I didn't know a few things about it, so I'm excited. And having played Volume before, like I know Mike Bithell is a good game developer, so it's going to be pretty exciting to try out both of those.
Definitely. He's a big name in the indie scene for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. All right, everyone. We will see you next week.
Thanks.